that you can react to.
I'm going to ask our director to do something for us since we're on the story of Tim Geithner. Come back to me if you can. It's interesting, but one of the plans that he's explaining to Senator Shelby is a plan to take all the bad debt in the United States and put it in one bank. The federal government would actually create a bank filled with nothing but bad debt. It's actually being called the Bad Bank. I want to get reaction on this from Professor Myron, but before we do that, we've asked Salman Khan, who's also an economist and who also has one of the most curious websites that you'll ever find, salmankhan.com on the internet, where he draws these things so that we can all understand them, because the average person can't understand these things. Watch what he's done. Dan, this is not the next soundbite that we were expecting. I want you to jump one ahead. Thanks. Here it is, Salman Khan on this bad bank idea presented today like you've never seen it.
I've drawn here a simple balance sheet for a bank. The left-hand side is the assets. This is the liabilities. This is what they owe to other people, liabilities. And here's the equity, or the stock. What the government wants to do is take these assets right here off the hands of the banks. And this is apparently because these banks can't sell these assets, or at least they can't sell these assets for what these banks need to sell them at in order to be able to meet their liabilities and in order to continue lending again. So the idea behind the bad bank plan, and the details are still coming out, so this is my best guess, is that they want to create a new bank here where some of the money is going to come from the government. So let's say half of it comes from the government. This is from the government. This is the cash that the government puts in initially. And then the other half comes from the private sector. I don't know if it's half. Maybe it's a lot more comes from the government. Maybe a lot more comes from the private sector. And then using all of this cash that comes from both the government and the private sector, they would go and buy these assets for more than the banks can sell them for right now. If these assets really are worth what they pay, then this bad bank, call this a bad bank, might do okay. On the other hand, if the current market that's only paying a lot less for this asset, let's say the current market's only paying less for this asset, and we're overpaying by a certain amount, that overpayment amount relative to the real value of the asset is essentially a subsidy of the stock and the bondholders of the current company.
That's why we call it participatory journalism. We think if there's somebody on the internet who's real good at explaining things, we're going to tap them and tap their resources like we did right there. Let's take it now to a Harvard professor, Jeffrey Myron. Did you see that? Was it a good explanation? Yes. But here's the question I really have for you. Will it work?
I don't think that